I noticed that there is a tendency online, and you probably noticed this too, to have very extreme types of men out there, right? So there's the kind of, for want of a better description, the Andrew Tate, alpha sigma male type who's out there grinding, working out all the time, getting in fights, womanizing, throwing all their cash around, driving Bugattis. That is one type of man that's out there. Let's not bullshit ourselves. There is that type of person out there. There's people who want to be like that, and we all can say it's embarrassing or it's cringe, but there is part of us that appeals to us. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the other extreme, which I would say is almost like the wet blanket man, the type who is just weak and pathetic and has no life direction and, can't seem to get their life together, lives in their parents' basement, plays video games all day, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And it seems like there's these two extremes. And if you go onto sites like Reddit or different things like that, there's no middle ground. So what are we as men? Where do we fit into this kind of categorization, if you like? And I wrote down actually 4 different names that I thought were kind of in line with where I see myself. And I think for a lot of people who are here as part of this community, you feel the same as well. And so the 4 types that I came up with are the postmodern man, the actualized man, the man of character, and the thinking man. So those are the 4 that I came up with. And the other title I had was the men in the middle. And I know none of us probably want to identify ourselves as average or being in the middle ground of life, but that is the truth. We are the men in the middle in a lot of ways in our lives. And if we can accept that and we can realize that's the reality of who we are, I think we can actually live a very fulfilling, purposeful, meaningful life as men in the middle. So I think at the end of the day, the name that I'm sticking with is the men or the man in the middle. And you can also talk about those other things, men of character, the thinking man, actualized man, or the postmodern man, whatever you'd like to call them. You can get very arty-farty here if you want to, but you get the idea. So I wrote down a couple of characteristics that I think represent what I would call the men in the middle. And I'll see if you identify with some of these. I'd be interested. Share a comment, see what you think. So there's 4 different characteristics I think that represent what I feel like I am, and I think you will probably identify with. Number 1 is we're nice, but we're not pushovers. Or we could say we're kind people, but we're not pushovers. And I think this is a really important distinction in that we're generous, we're supportive, we're willing to listen and to say, I love you, and to help people and to do all those things that modern men are supposed to do. But at the same time, we're not necessarily just pushovers. We're not being told we have to do something and just giving in, whether it's to women or men or whatever. We have a backbone, we have character, and we're willing to stand our ground. And that is kind of it's a hard thing to balance, right? Because on one hand, you want to be really kind and generous and supportive and be everything that you're supposed to be. And on the other hand, you have to be strong and you have to be resilient. You have to be persistent. You have to be, driven in your own way. And so I think the idea of being nice but not being a pushover, that's the middle ground that the men in the middle kind of navigate. And it's tough. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly where you fit and why you are doing what you're doing, but you kind of live by your own code of conduct where you don't want to treat people like crap, but at the same time you want to get what you want to get in your life and you want to get ahead in your own way. So that's the first one, is that we're nice but we're not pushovers. Second one is we're ambitious, but we're not unbalanced. And I think this alludes to what I was talking about earlier with the alpha or the sigma male kind of, myth out there. There's this idea that we're all going to be millionaires and we're all going to be world famous and we're all going to crush every goal. We're going to become world-class entrepreneurs who are, free to do exactly what we want. That's the fantasy version of success. I do think the men in the middle do have ambition. I certainly do. I have things I want to do in my life. I'm challenging myself to try and achieve, this being one of them, creating this community. But at the same time, I'm not unbalanced. And I think that's the risk that a lot of men fall into. The mistake we have today is that we think, okay, I have to sacrifice any sense of balance or sanity or normality just so I can achieve something and I can be great. And the reality is that that's not the case for most people. A lot of men have families, they have a partner, they have work commitments, they have a lot of financial responsibilities. There's a ton of things they have to do in their life that stop them from being able to just give it all up, burn it all down, and live this ridiculous, grind set, sigma male life or whatever the hell it's called these days. So we are ambitious, but we're not unbalanced. And I think that's really important to realize as a man, is that that's okay. You can be in the middle of having goals, having ambitions, having plans, but at the same time wanting to relax, wanting to enjoy life and enjoy the journey with your partner, with your friends, with your family, experience life for what it is in the moment. If you fall too far to either side of it, I think it gets dangerous and it gets messy. And I've certainly done both. I'm sure you have too. But somehow being in the middle, the ambitious but not unbalanced, that's where I think the magic is for us men in the middle. The third one is around relationships and dating and sexuality. And I think we want to date, we want to be attractive, but we don't want to womanize or we don't want to be players. Okay, so I'd say we want to be attractive, but we don't want to be players, is probably the best way to say it. And again, this is something maybe I'll talk about in a future episode. I've fallen into this trap of thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a ladies' man. I'm going to learn all the tricks and the pickup lines and the tactics, and I'm going to sleep with all these women. I'm going to do this stuff. Yeah, it's going to be great. It never really works out. The truth is, for most men, that doesn't happen. I would say for the vast majority of men, that does not happen unless you're somehow famous or very rich or whatever. That's just not reality. The reality is that you'll probably have mild success in your dating life and you will be attractive to some women, but some women you will not be attractive to. And I think as men, we need to recognize that and see that as a reality. Know that, hey, we are going to have some dating success if we put our best foot forward, if we learn to communicate, if we dress well, if we get our lives together, we're going to be able to attract women into our lives. And some of those women will be very attractive to us. But at the same time, we're probably not going to be players. We're not going to be, sleeping with every woman in town or whatever. It's just not how we are as men. And the sooner you let go of that fantasy, I think the better life gets, because there is part of us, the dark psychology, the hidden fantasy part of men, where we fall into that and we think, yeah, that's what I want to be like. The truth is, you probably don't want to be like that. Otherwise, you'd be investing more energy into it. And you watch all the videos online. We know we've all watched them, the pickup artists and all that kind of stuff. And there's a reason we like to watch it, but we don't do it. And that is because the fantasy is better than the reality. And so I think realistically, we want to be attractive. We want to be dating. We want to meet a partner. But at the same time, we don't need to take it to an extreme and become hedonistic and over the top, players or womanizers or whatever you want to say. So that's the third one. And the fourth one, I think, that the men in the middle have is the need to grow and to have purpose. And I know for me, this is something that I've really tuned into, especially from my mid-20s onwards. I started to feel like there's more to life than I'm experiencing. There's something missing in some way. And I couldn't really put my finger on it. At first, I thought it was just wanting more success or wanting a partner or wanting to travel. And I did all those things. But I started to realize, no, it's something more. And what I finally clued into, probably in my late 20s into my early 30s, was that I needed to grow. I needed to develop. I needed to learn. I needed to actualize. That's the word I use a lot. And I think probably you're the same, my friend, in that the reason you tend to gravitate towards videos like mine or reading books about self-improvement, personal development, psychology, philosophy, all those kind of things is because part of you needs to grow. You're tapping into that actualizing part of your personality that Maslow talks about. Whether you're fulfilling it or not, whether you're actually pursuing it directly or you're just interested in it, either is okay. But you have a need to grow in your life. And so that is something that I think the men in the middle, they are the ones who are actually driven by that. They want a meaningful, fulfilling, purposeful life. It may not necessarily be the ultimate success, but they want a life that's worthwhile and fulfilling. So these four characteristics: number one, nice but not pushovers. Number two, ambitious but not unbalanced. Number three, want to be attractive but don't want to be players. And number four, have the need to grow and to have purpose. I would say these are the things that define the men in the middle. And that's what I believe. I am a man in the middle, whether it's my middle years or the middle of society, the middle of the extremes of masculine culture. I'm right in the middle. And I feel like for a lot of us men, we are right there. So maybe that resonates for you. I know for me, that is exactly the demographic and the target of people that I love to talk with and work with. And most of my friends are like that as well. So if that resonates for you, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about it, if that's true for you, and the extremes that you've fallen into in the past, because I think it's an interesting discussion. And the more that we recognize this reality for ourselves, the more likely I think we are to actually live more fulfilling lives, because we let go of the fantasy of the extremes, which is really the trap that we all fall into, especially when we're online.